Good afternoon and most welcome to the art gallery of our friend Shamsi Naimi. It is situated in Masthugget, close to the old neighborhood of Majorna, which used to be my home place for many years. Majorna comes from the Estonian word majas, that means house. So it has an Estonian origin, because in those times Sweden was bigger and Estonian was actually a language that you could hear on the streets of Gothenburg. They were often sailors because they used to belong to a sailing empire called Kurland that only lasted for a couple of decades. But they actually had a province in the West Indies. So if you wonder, if you go to the West Indies, why there is a place outside Tobago called Kurland Bay, that is actually caused by this old part of Sweden called Kurland, that later was sort of sucked up by the Swedish superpower ambitions. They even had a Duke of Kurland. I don't remember his name. Official language was German. So that goes to show that our ideas of the world are superficial at one level. That could be true according to ourselves and others. But if you start to dig deeper, you find oddities that you never expect, and those oddities change the depth. They might not really change the superficial take, but it deepens, and that is knowledge, and it doesn't seem to be an end to it. It doesn't have a final floor of knowledge. There is no basement. I will not talk about the basement of knowledge today. I will instead talk about the lack of location in space, but the basement is well worth getting back to maybe tomorrow, but for today I need to sort of relax my head for a while. Today's lecture, Heidegger 1006, will be about the lack of space and how it causes tension and strain, both on the mental aspect and also on the physical aspect. Why are we tensed? And I was looking at the people when I walked here earlier on. It was a rather brisk walk that took me an hour. And I saw people were very tensed on the way. This is the lunch rush, and people were ailing back to their workplaces. They did not look really widened, and they didn't look lengthened. They look sort of slouched. And that is the very idea that if you focus on the existence of your own body, it will become healthier or stronger. I think this goes to show the absolute opposite is the case. Start with an existing body and you put a preemptive limitation on your body. A body map as shown by the couples Barbara Conable, which I've been in contact with, but also her husband, whose first name I forgot, but let's call him Mr. Conable. They show that our imagination is decisive on how we use ourselves. And by expanding our thinking, taking on in the surrounding space, you can both keep the cookie, so to speak, have the existence of your body, and you can have the surrounding space and attention and awareness. But also the opposite is true. If you start out with the existence of your body or just put your awareness on the surrounding things, you will not even be able to eat the cookie, neither to keep it. You will have both in one case, and in the other case you will have none. And that's rather tough, but I think what I saw today sort of proves it. I would say at least 95%. It was the odd jogger, young jogger, who was widening into space and looked healthy. The rest looked really unhealthy and unhappy in their being. And this is also a mental strain. This is something that makes thinking very cumbersome. This makes thinking being restrained from the outset, and we get this very cumbersome, energy sucking thinking of representative thinking. And this is of course the N2 neurons. I had the time to look into it a bit more. They actually consume 1/3 to 1.5 more energy than the normal cells that we should use, the thinking cells. Whereas the cells we're using now are not really thinking cells. They cannot produce thinking. What they do is simply react to stimuli. They are, so to speak, flight and fight response neurons, and there is no deeper thinking for them. It's just a reaction. And this is what John Eiskens called the shallow thinking of modern time. And that of course could be made by a simple computer. That is nothing advanced. And we make ourselves spiritually and mentally very small by taking off the space. Our thinking processes makes it impossible for us to deepen our thinking. It needs to go up quite a bit. So a little bit more maybe. It's possible. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. That's fine. Maybe angle it a bit so it go a bit more to my face there. Yeah, sure. Once we take in space, I'm doing it right now, the surrounding space, I feel the placing of my feet becoming more, what could I say, firmly grounded on the surface where I'm standing. And I'm beginning here now to feel the coldness of the floor. It's very cold. Actually, it's a discomfort coming to my brain now. It doesn't feel very nice actually. And I wish I was standing on a carpet. Well, I'll put a pause and I'm going to put something under my feet, but the floor is very cold. I did not feel the floor initially here. It was a no thing. And now I begin to hear my voice here in the room. I can also hear it doesn't resound. There is no echo. Mainly because of these specific things that are put in place to suck up sound to make it a little bit more quiet. So it's hard to tell the spatial figure of the room. Whereas I point my voice in this direction, there is an echo coming back. Whereas I turn this way, there is very little echo coming back. And those are the things we start to notice. This is me interacting with the world. This is me projecting to the world. And that's a necessity to get anything back. The same goes for thinking. If I am in this N2 state, which I am now because I've been walking really briskly and a bit stressful, there will be no possibility for me to have deeper thinking. I cannot reach into any deeper layers. I can't arrange my thoughts, and they come almost automatically. And this is the shallowness of modern thinking, or the absolute lack of any intellectual power, or very little intellectual power, repetitive renaming principle in my head. But the more we get into the presence of the space, the more things seem to calm down a bit. There is a calmness coming down. And now I notice that the taking away of the sound is very effective. I don't hear anything from the street. I did not previously notice that. It's very quiet here. maybe they had an office earlier here and they were dependent on being more silent. But the good thing is, when we take in awareness, when we take in the space around us, we can both keep the cake, that this is the surrounding space, and we also have the possibility to have our own existing body. More firmly, balanced, coordinated, stronger, more flexible, more agile, ready to react, but also more calm, ready to relax. Those two things are very important. And the people I saw on my way, they were not able to do neither. They couldn't relax and they couldn't sort of put an effort into anything. It becomes a nilly-willy state where there is not any firm states. It's somewhere in between, but it's also a neither nor. And this is, of course, another a priori take on the reality. As I mentioned, Stephen Wolfram, he said that everything that we need to understand the world is space. But if you start with existence, you're bound to get lost mathematically, topologically, and also we as living beings. We tend to start with existence. I tend to start with the idea that my body exists. I don't let this openness or calmness that is, I would say, always available for us. We can always gain awareness. Awareness never gets lost permanently. It is always round the corner. And for every time you sort of send your awareness around yourself, especially above yourself or behind yourself, send your hearing there, because you can hear your voice, you can even hear your pulse. Some part of your system can do that. And once I send awareness to the back, I feel how my weight once more get into position over the heels. I'm now standing much less on my toes. And one good thing is that you can check it out by wiggling your toes like this. Yeah, you should be able effortlessly to wiggle your toes. I started out trying to do that and it was almost impossible. But now I can do it. They don't see firmly established to the ground. I will, however, put some weight to the toes as well, but I can still sort of change my position. Ideally, whereas you train awareness, which is a feature you train, because in the process you're going to change your neural cells from N2 to N1. That's a process that takes time. But every time you think about awareness and you send out awareness, there will be a change. There will at least, see it this way, there will be at least one N2 that goes over to N1. I'm quite sure it's going to be maybe a couple of hundred, maybe 1,000, I don't know. But every time you do that, there is a change going on in your brain. Because you never usually send your awareness around yourself. That doesn't happen. That is a conscious decision. And now you're already partaking in something most people don't. You are actually changing your own brain. And then you will eventually also change your muscular makeup, because the muscles won't change until you change your awareness, because there is this very firm connection. They are the same thing to one extent. Rather important to understand, but send your awareness around yourself. See if you can be firmly established where you are, and also take in a lot of the air and understand that awareness and space are very close to connected. And this is one thing that Stephen Wolfram, this British physicist, showed, and that is, if we start with existence and we say that existences are there a priori just like Immanuel Kant, then the next step will be that we sort of arrange these existences in a cause and effect manner. And then we get a timeline, and then we all have all this chain. That chain is bound to be wrong because space is the foundation. Space is the foundation. If we start with existence, we will actually thwart our whole understanding in the wrong direction already at the outset. The world cannot be understood as existences. Later, you will have existences, but those would be true existences. They will have true individual existence, apart from you, not being invention by your automatic N2 cells. These would be true subjects, true objects, true existences, with substance, with dimensions, with color. They will be clearly perceptible. They will be satisfying objects for your experience. That you cannot have if you start out with them. Then you turn objects into fantasies, or you never get access to the objects. So you lose out on both the openness and the possibility, but you also lose out on having objects that could be true, satisfying, and help you to localize. And I think that's very important too, because you can't localize your existence in a pre-made, almost illusory, I'm a bit afraid to use that expression, illusory. It is not completely illusory, but it is in some ways completely wrong. And then you don't know where you are. You send signals to your body, you don't know where you are, and you automatically tense. And obviously, like any animal on this planet, they are all localized. They all put awareness first, because that's absolutely, it's a sine qua non for every survival thing. You won't find a bird who's not aware where it is. But you will, however, find human beings in the Western Hemisphere who don't know where they are. What is the reaction when you don't know where you are? It is scare. You get afraid. Your body needs to know where it is. You need to know where you are in space. And then this sloppy existences will not do. You need something that is part of reality, and that is space. And you need to learn what sort of characteristics space have. And this is what Stephen Wolfram is saying. There are things we can learn from the world, but we can only learn them from space directly. And those are going to be rules, properties, things, not the Kantian idea of length, width and depth. No, this is proper learning. Things that people probably known for ages, knowledge that we've been giving up, especially in the last century. We've been throwing important knowledge on how space is working out of the window, and we've been acknowledging this simulation reality instead. And I would say a simple thing like don't walk under a ladder, it is actually coming from space, and I think it has a significance. It should be followed. That's a very specific property on space, but space has other properties. For instance, when you're in England, don't run over a field, and it means that you might break your leg. That wouldn't happen in Sweden, and I won't give you an explanation, but that is something you learn when you go into space. Space is different in different places also. Whereas the absolute space seems to have the same properties everywhere. And exactly as Leibniz said, then there is no chance of learning anything. There won't be anything decisive. There will be only relativistic knowledge. That is no knowledge at all. You cannot firmly establish things. You will not have a Geschichte you can lean back on. And you don't understand what our ancestors have given us as an inheritance. We don't use that, we ignore it. We don't see it as a source of knowledge. We don't see architecture of olden days as being healthier for us. We need constantly an explanation, and that explanation comes from the idea of existences and an empty space that is actually in a rather sloppy way defined by existence. We usually call empty space non-existence, which is completely wrong according to Stephen Wolfram and also Julian Barber. We can never see space as the opposite of existence. Then we have a pre-made division that is not true for what actually is at hand. And by doing those pre-made things, we hurt knowledge, we hurt reality. We sort of block out access before we're even there. We are saying to ourselves when we see a painting, oh, that's just a flower. Maybe you can direct your camera in that direction. I will say, oh, that's just a flower, that's nothing specific. But it's not until I let my bodily system be present that leads me to the understanding, oh, this is actually made of textile. This is woven, but from an outset. And academic thinking would be saying, oh, that's just a flower or something generalized, and I won't get into it. And if you don't have your subject present, if you're not aware, this is going to be your conclusion. This is going to be your lower level chaotic system. Lower level of thinking, intelligence, understanding, perception, cognition, and all that. Everything goes down. So clearly shown by modern time scientists of cognition like Gibson and Tony Chimero, that we don't understand anymore because we don't know that we are living thinking systems that needs to be directed. We think that thinking is somewhere outside ourselves, and the only thing we need to do is sort of tap into that, a little bit like putting the plug into the wall where there's electricity coming out. This idea of a completely passive knowledge is, as the rather harsh Tony Chimero said, nothing but complete ignorance. That is the epitome of ignorance. It doesn't get any worse. And this is only starting to happen in modern times. This is not a thing of the past. We did not have such a low level of understanding before. It's an absolutely new thing. Understanding has always been present in human beings. Not understanding is new. And this is so clearly proven by science of cognition, neurology, and also from artificial intelligence. From science itself, it proves that intelligence is dropping steeply. And there is a good reason for that. The whole idea of a passive intelligence that's been sort of acting in the background until recently, because of, I would say, mainly practical factors, like in the 19th century you could not give up understanding because you would die of starvation. You needed to be on your feet, so to speak. Somebody would slap their hands, or rather nature itself would slap their hands, and if you're not aware in the factories of Victorian era, you would lose an arm or a finger or your whole body. But nowadays we don't risk that anymore. Everything is safe. That was another thing that struck me. The whole bridge thing, when I walked from my island, which is called Hissing Island, to central Gothenburg, where I'm now, more or less, central Gothenburg, I was struck by so many safety devices everywhere. It was like I could be blind, I could walk with my eyes shut, still nothing would happen to me. There were like fences everywhere, signs everywhere. I could be absolutely unaware. And of course that's a good thing to a certain extent. But what helps me to be on my feet? Nothing. I could give up the project of being aware, and I could think that the state and the city council is doing me favors, I don't die. I wouldn't think so. There is no more horrible destiny than being unaware. That means that my own life and my own thinking process is no longer present to me. So we are building up a system that actually helps people to be even more unaware, more slouch, less agile, less on their feet. And then you can fall together and think, this is not my life even. And I think that's the situation for 90-95% of the population today. The passivity is in thinking already. And then it doesn't help if you try to be physically active. That this is like after everything is already established. This is one thing that I noticed once we were in the gallery here when I had my exhibitions. I got these bland, blank eyes looking at the pictures with no understanding from the very outtake. I would say like academic eyes, that there is no thinking and you can never learn anything. Everything is already over. We cannot progress, everything is done with. And why these people were not utterly depressed, I don't know. But what a horrible outtake on life. And what a horrible outtake on reality. Because nothing of that comes from reality itself. On the contrary, you need to actively block out reality to come to that conclusion. There is no other possibility. By taking away everything of your own world and your own body and sort of escaping into the reflective consciousness of the head. And that means always to tense your neck. And tension in the neck is a new thing. It did not exist to a greater extent previously. Look at all paintings, you see people being freshened out. Now tension is 100%. And that blocks everything off. The first thing that gets blocked off is, as Matthias Alexander says, it is your thinking capacity. It disappears completely. And this is what he said, there is no use anymore, or will be no use for the great books anymore. And that he said already in 1912. I would say 20 years after that, people started not to read Shakespeare and Chaucer and the great literature because they couldn't reach into it. They could no longer understand it. That takes balance. It takes an idea that intelligence is not a passivity. It is not something you plug into in the wall or you're born with and you never have to train ever. You can just sit like this. Where does understanding come from? And then you start to drool. And then you're ready for dementia. They actually, I heard this the other day in Stockholm, they call one of the hospitals where they treat people with pre-dementia for the little university. And I think it's a point nowadays, because of all the repetition that goes on, the endlessly renaming process in the brains of people with higher education, they bring about a early dementia. It breaks the brain because the N2 cells are really pre-dementia already. You're not supposed to have them activated all the time. They should be only activated in a connection with great danger. You can imagine yourself, if you have your neural cells and muscles that are only for great danger, you are sending out all the different hormones like adrenaline, what is it called? Not cholesterol. But cholesterol comes into the point as well. Crystal and all the other things. Adrenaline, noradrenaline, crystal and all those things. And that breaks your body. It makes your body go on full speed all the time because you're scared. You don't know where you are. You are blocking off your perception, and then the body gets even more scared. And what is your reaction? You tense yourself even more because now the body is beginning to hurt. And this is the downward spiral. And the less you understand, the less you feel your body, and the less you feel the pain and the horrors of your own life. And in the end, because you don't get any input, not from your body and not from the external world, you get more and more into this dreamlike state. And that is pre-dementia. That is actually pre-dementia. The scare neurons needs to be taken really serious because they cause pain in the body, not only with what they send out. Cortisol, it's a substance that makes pain in the body. There's another thing. Once you discover pain in your body, which is quite common, you will start to have a sort of a loop-like activity where you objectify the pain. And you can compare that to, you block your body from your head, you have this reflective consciousness, you think you're not part of the world, you don't take anything in out of the world, but a pain, it's so strong, so it goes through the neck and it will tell your head, so to speak, or your consciousness, or whatever is left of it, that you're in pain. But the next step you do is to objectify the pain. You make it to an existence. And that existence will, just like all the other existences, turn up before the fact. And here you see how pain get established in these chronic pain diseases. It's your head that tells you have a pain already before you felt it. And then it becomes permanent. No pain among normal animals are permanent. There are not permanent pain within animals. Because pain is something that is there to help you take it easy, to relax, maybe take medicine, avoid using your leg if it's broken. But chronic pain is only in humans, and that is when you objectify the pain, made it an existence. And as the same way with tinnitus I discussed earlier, it becomes a thing by itself. And you create that pain in your system. That's the loop-like character. And that pain, that will not recede. Whereas normal pain, like healthy pain, that does actually recede. Just by acknowledging pain being of your body, like the coldness on the floor. Once I acknowledge the coldness of the floor, it's still there, but it's not as obtrusive. It doesn't disturb me that much. And I have a sort of an activity inclination now, and that's to put my feet very soon on something nice, like a warm carpet. But as soon as I block it out, I make it worse somehow. My body reacts with, how do you say, a nasty sensory experience. And what is my reaction? I tense myself not to feel it. And this is actually one of the points that Richard E. Lynn points out. And this is the reflective consciousness blocks out what it thinks to be bad experience. But pain is not a bad experience. It is not that for an animal. It is not the case for a healthy human being. But an unbalanced human being, for him or her, pain is something dreadful. And it becomes a really, really horrible pain as well. Back pain is just one of those things. 30% of the population is today suffering from back pain. And that is caused by making it an object. And then it becomes worse. I challenge you to find an animal with chronic back pain. You will find animal with instant back pain. They will have back pain for a short while, but it will cease within a couple of days. And if the back problem remains, maybe they have broken the back, they will either die or they get used to it, but they will no longer feel the pain. And this happened in the ancient time. I mentioned my father, my grandfather earlier. He had a broken leg and he only felt pain in the beginning. although all the neurons were completely shattered, and it was also neurons that were sort of twisted in with each other. That always happens when you have a broken leg that doesn't heal properly. Our bones are followed by neural systems to tell us in what position is the bone and what sort of happens in the joint. And they get shattered, whereas the bone doesn't heal properly. But he didn't feel any pain. I think when we speak about pain today, we are usually talking about this objectified new and modern pain. That pain that will not disappear, and often, scarily enough, it's usually almost not even reachable by medication. This is one of those oddities, not even medication help, because an objectified pain will be sort of projected before you feel. And that means if the painkiller goes in and take away the pain, you will still produce it. It is like you're making up your own invention. I don't say chronic pain disease is an invention by the person. It goes hand in hand with the outer reality. But we affect outer reality. That is true. We have always already been here. So reality is not something completely separable from ourselves. But it is part and parcel of this idea that we are completely passive. And all of a sudden, as I mentioned in some previous lecture, those things going on in our head that can turn into CDs and other things. Pain is similar in some sense. Although it seems to be coming from the body, they are also repeated by the mind because of the modern mind's absolute passivity. Well, my last take on this could be Edward de Bono and his passive information system. And if you trust on that passivity, pain would, so to speak, be established as the droplets going on into the box of sand. And after a while, it will establish a little creek. That creek will turn into a stream, and in the end, it will be almost like an existence, like an established river. And that pain, it is felt, but it's still a creation of the passivity system. It's like once you give in to passivity, that your whole understanding, your intelligence, your cognition, your perception, the way of getting knowledge is absolutely passive, then you also give in to the idea that pain is something passively acquired. And then you should be lucky enough to not get something that gives you intense pain and hope it will only last 1 week or 2. But I'm sorry to say, if it lasts more than 3 weeks, your makeup is already going to change. And if it lasts more than a couple of months, it's very big chance it will become permanent, and you will feel it every second of your life, even when you're sleeping. And that's the big problem with the passivity system. So that I brought up today to show how a passivity system works, but it could also be a clue to get better health, because pain in the end is gruesome and it makes your body crumble up even more because you don't want to feel what you feel. And I think one investigation coming from E. McGilchrist is like 60 to 70% of the school children in England, they do think that reality is something inherently bad. Like if you live in reality, that will affect you badly in some way. There is no benefits of being in reality. Reality in itself inherently bad. So what you can do is dream or escape in different modes, but reality in itself is utterly boring and it doesn't have any interesting features. And to that I have something to say. Look at this painting. Once you go out your academic eyes and start to put in your own body, feel your own body, have your perceptions, have your emotions, this painting blooms up. It becomes something more interesting. And then you get surprised and you get enticed, and then you can even go further and sort of train up your perception and look at even greater paintings and enjoy them. Because we are built for enjoying reality and our bodies. This is, I think, that's the why of existence. And there is nothing wrong with joy. Usually we say you shouldn't take enjoyment in reality because we are doomed to be here somehow. We're just thrown in here by some evil existence and we have to survive somehow. I don't agree with that. I'm always been thinking more in the region of the old Renaissance thinking. Life is in itself a gift, something fantastic. And they sure proved it with their great art, architecture and great thinking as well. They enjoyed their thinking. It's so obvious. I think we end with this marvelous painting and yeah, sure.
Speaking about being present, so we are now in Majuna to return to your Estonian introduction. So I used it that it comes from an Estonian word Majas, and I thought about the Finnish word Maja, and Finnish and Estonian they are related. And Maja in Finnish is cottage. Or like probably think about these three structures. So it's an example of...
You see here, there's for me now a deepening of knowledge. So I can't put my foot down and say I reached the end of understanding. I didn't know that, and it's very interesting. Very interesting. So you see, there is no end to understanding. You can constantly go deeper and deeper. And it's not like Sabine Hossenfeller says. Well, she thinks she's going to reach the theory of everything in 2035 or something. And then she can hand in her papers and she can go to vacation to Lanzarote or somewhere and stay there the rest of her life. And knowledge is finished and she doesn't have to think anymore. No, it's not like that at all. It's not even close. I say thank you very much and I wish you a very pleasant afternoon. Bye bye.